when people ask me about safe havens, I usually say that we kind of have our origins, I guess, in the fatwa, or the response, I guess, of writers, prominent writers around the world, to the fatwa issued against Salman Rushdie quite some time back, 96 if I recall correctly. And out of that rose the World Parliament of Writers, and the impetus that provided 10 years later sowed the seeds and created International Cities of Refuge Network. And out of that arose in 2017, in 2013, the Safe Havens initiative itself. It started to mature in 2017 with the creation of the Arts, Rights, Justice Academy at University of Hildesheim in Germany. So we've come quite a long way, and the sector's really evolved and developed with time. What was originally quite a European and Eurocentric initiative is now starting to spread around the world. This is in particular why we have safe havens this year in Cape Town. But there are many initiatives that are springing up around the continent in places that may be surprising to some of you, particularly if you've been watching the news about some of these places. It's often a delight to see that in the midst of some quite intense regional troubles, particularly, let's say, in the Great Lakes region of Africa, that protective mechanisms are springing up and coming to the fore and gaining ground and being established. We'll look later on we'll do a Uganda case study, essentially, bringing together a really fascinating panel of people who are working on different initiatives in Uganda. But there's more than that, more than just Uganda. In Cotonou, in Benin, and in Dar es Salaam, in Tanzania, we're seeing initiatives springing up. So I'd like to go straight over to Olivier to tell us about some of those initiatives, because I'm dying to hear about them. You're on mic too? Oh, you got your headset, great, okay.
Guys, now, Mike. So it's on.
Okay, good morning.
Olivier wanted to do a bit of a presentation because these initiatives are all brand new to everybody in the room, I think.
Sorry guys, I'll give you that.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Olivier Muhizi. I'm the program coordinator at the Africa H.A.R.T Network Foundation. This is a human rights organization that was created by human rights defenders who are living in the the Netherlands, and who were forced to live in the Netherlands because of their work. Then we decided to work together on the protection of human rights defenders. It was founded in 2016, and to work on protection, we, as Michael said, we created 2 shelter cities. One shelter is in Dar es Salaam and another is in Benin. But the one in Benin has just started this year. At the beginning, we didn't think about artists because we just people who were working with the human rights organizations. But later on, in 2018, we realized that it was important to also work on artists, because they are also human rights defenders, and So because I want to show you a video on the activities the artists do when they are located, I will just take like 3 minutes I will not read everything, but we chose Tanzania because it is like the safest country in the region, in the East and Central Africa. There are still problems, but at least it is the safest country, and there are some other international NGOs working there. And and as I said, since 2019 we started in Benin, because there were also some other reasons. And because we realized that there are some limits in the limitations on visa in Tanzania, but in Benin, when you are an African citizen, the visa is not required. So it was just like to be quick when we want to help. When we want to help human rights defenders or artists. So the services we have been providing at our shelter cities is like we pay a return ticket for someone who wants to come to the shelter, but those are at risk human rights defenders and artists. And accommodation, we give medical and psychosocial assistance, and we give them an opportunity to exchange with other artists in Tanzania, for instance, or in Benin, where they can do some activities together or even record a song when they are musicians and so on. We give them a workspace, like material and a place where they can work and continue their work, because when they come, it is just a temporary location. It is just always for 3 months, but they can just extend for another 3 months, not more. So it is like what you do is just to help them to rest, but also to adopt new strategies and go back and continue their work. We focus on this, on the return, because as I said, the organization was created by members of the diaspora in the Netherlands. And I heard what my colleague said, that maybe other artists think that people, when they go to Europe, they think that life is there. But on the contrary, when they are there, it is like they lose their target. In Europe, in the other countries, you were doing your artwork and you were defending human rights, but when you are there, it is so, almost impossible to keep doing what you used to do for the community. So that's why we are focusing on the return and empowering people to go back and continue their work in their own country. That's what they like. That's what they want. So we are really working on this, and So far it is working, because so far we have relocated 97 human rights defenders. Only 8 people were artists, sorry, but because we started last year, we are also planning to relocate another group of 11 artists in January. There will be only 2 women artists, but yeah, we think in the future will help many people. So when they are there, we have also the trainings, because most of them are from French-speaking countries, for instance. They learn English and Swahili in Tanzania, and you have like the digital security training for them, because sometimes they are tracked, like the information when they post something on Facebook and so on. The government always use what they posted. We had, for instance, someone from Burundi who were just using his artwork to fight against corruption. But he was arrested because of that. He was just drawing people. But when people see the painting, they will know that this should be that person, the government authority. Then they arrested him. We had people like from Congo who were arrested because they were using their art just to protest, because there were like a third term. The president wanted to run the third term. It was not constitutional. Then, because they were artists, when they started protesting, so many people came after them, because they were like also enjoying what they were doing as artists, and then the government arrested them. But they were part of the group who was relocated in Tanzania. You will see what they were doing in Tanzania, and yeah, it is like amazing to see someone who just came from jail, the prison, but who is still working and who wants to continue working and who wants to help other people. And we had also another artist from Tanzania, even if the project is in Tanzania, but there are still problems. He had drawn the president with a big head, but for the president, it was, even in the public, the president said, no, how can you do this? How can you draw me with that big head? But it was like, it was just a message the artist was giving to the population. Then he disappeared for 2 days. When he came back, he didn't say anything, but he had also to meet other artists from the region, and they talked. And when they are there, we always organize also public events. For instance, when we organize the public event, what we call Art and the Human Rights Exhibition, we invited the authorities and the international NGOs, the foreign representatives, like the embassies, and then people also talked about their issues in their countries, and that Tanzanian artist also had time to give his testimony. So I didn't want to it can take like a long time, the presentation, but those are like the activities we are organizing when they are in Tanzania. We have like a live performance, and you have this Art and Human Rights Exhibition. It is an annual event. When they are there, they have just to show people that they are not enemies of the government, or they are just there to help the communities. So, yeah, those are the pictures. Like when we had in February this year, the exhibition we had. As you can see, there are always many people from different NGOs, embassies, the government. So what we are trying to do is also like to do advocacy for human rights defenders and the artists. Yeah, I will say that we still have, as I said, we relocated just one group of artists. There were 6 for the first round. Then we relocated another, other 2 artists. But now we are thinking to locate another group in January of 11 artists from 5 countries, 5 African countries. There are still challenges. And one of them is like, we receive so many applications from artists because it is like, now they are real activists and they really want to make changes in their communities, but there are people, especially from the government, who want to stop them. And it is, I don't know if it is really possible to stop an artist from doing his job. It is really difficult. So what we are doing is just to locate them temporarily and help them to go back and build networks with the other artists in the region and try to work together. But we have like limited means to help them. So that is the biggest challenge. But I hope together we'll do more. I will just share the video with me. With you. It is just 6 minutes. It is just to show you like, what they do when they are in Tanzania. Yeah. Their works they did, it was just the same day, like weekend live we had, but their messages from their paintings, their songs, their dances, so, and it was like they now have hope, because it was like they were still doubting, like what maybe the community or other people do not like what we are doing. But when they came to Tanzania, they saw like people who came for those public events we were organizing for them. They are like those people from Congo. Even if you Google like their names, you can see when they were arrested. All the international communities and the international human rights NGOs were condemning this arrest, but after they were released, it was like they wanted to stop, really. But after coming to Tanzania and going back to Goma, they are now organizing a big festival in February next year.
That's fantastic, Olivier. I really think that was a great exposition of exactly what Miriam started out saying. It's like, let us inject a message and achieve a vision of hope here, that we have something, a lot, in fact, positive to celebrate and create. And I'm amazed at the scale of the project, and that it's come to fruition so rapidly, that it's dealt with so many people so quickly. I want to move on to Charles here, quickly, to tell us about the Pan-African Human Rights Defenders Network and their initiatives in 4 cities, I believe. The first being Kampala, that we will hear more about later on during Safe Havens. But perhaps you can give us an overview of how this all came together, which cities you're looking at and why.
Hello, is it afternoon now? Yeah, my name is Charles. I see on the program it says Jacob actually. Yeah. My name is Charles. I work for Southern Africa Human Rights Defenders Network, which we work closely with Pan-Africa Human Rights Defenders Network, which is based in Kampala, but as we are based here in Johannesburg. So we have got an initiative that we created within the whole of Africa. So this is called the Ubuntu Hub Cities Initiative, which focuses more on relocating human rights defenders, African human rights defenders in Africa, in order for them to be able to interact with other human rights defenders in countries that they will be relocated, in order to learn best practices and also to allow them to experience the environment that they are working in. So this initiative it's in South Africa. The cities that we have identified is Cape Town, Pretoria, Johannesburg. And the reason why is because when we relocate human rights defenders, we want them to be able to interact with and also be placed in places where there are universities, organizations with the work that they are doing, in order for them to not be idle and just come here and sit. So in East Africa, it's in Kampala. West Africa, it's in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire. Then in North Africa, it's in Tunis. So basically what I wanted to say in regards to people working on creative and arts is the fact that the mechanisms are there, but the problem is when it comes to accessing them. Because mainly with organizations like ours that we deal with, there's a scarcity on the definition of human rights defenders. Because when you say human rights defenders, usually we look at the blue chip, those that are mainly working in NGOs, but yet artists are human rights defenders. And they actually find out human rights defenders who should be able to access this mechanism. But the problem is most of them actually don't know that they are human rights defenders, because they think that I'm just writing a song or I'm just acting. So I think there's more need for organizations who protect human rights defenders to sensitize and make sure that they are aware that whatever they are doing, they are protecting, and they're also working as human rights defenders, and they can access these mechanisms. Because the perfect example is there's a lady who was a writer. So she was writing about the massacres that happened in Zimbabwe, where the Bukura Hundi. But she was now being attacked, but she didn't know that she's a human rights defender. So we managed to relocate her to a safe space here in South Africa. And also recently, we also do a human rights award ceremony, which this year we managed to give to a lady who does satire as a way of what's the word? I'm forgetting the word, but yeah, she uses comedy and satire in order to make government accountable. So I think as human rights defender organizations, we should shift towards looking at people working in creative and arts so that they're able to access these mechanisms. I think I can leave it here.
Yeah, I think that's really crucial. That we're all aware that people often start out as artists and then they get into trouble because of some artwork they've put up or some performance that they've done in a public space, and then they wind up standing up for their artwork, defending their right of freedom of speech, and sort of almost accidentally or by osmosis become human rights defenders, because by taking that stance, and they wind up speaking in public in defense of everybody else's right to freedom of speech and freedom of expression. So certainly we're seeing the confluence between these two concepts, and it's very much a theme within Safe Havens, is how human rights defenders and artists are often one and the same. My own initiative, I'll explain it very, very briefly. Hamel Arts Rights Transfer, or H.A.R.T, is essentially named after Anton Hamel, who was a South African photojournalist who was killed by Gaddafi's forces while covering the so-called Arab Spring in Libya in 2011. We are essentially providing a fellowship to up to 3 human rights defenders who work in the arts, so we sit perfectly at that intersection for either 6 months or a year. So 6 months, just a brief relocation if somebody needs to get out of the kitchen for a while because the heat is too hot, and then can then go back home once things have cooled down, once the controversy is blown over, or a longer period of 12 months if they're looking at perhaps going on into a longer term exile or applying for asylum seeker status, etc. We haven't yet received anybody, but we're almost on the point of being able to do that, and we'll probably receive our first fellow in the new year. What's interesting to me, however, is first of all that the significant differences between protective mechanisms in the north and the south. Safe Havens is very aware of the necessity to try and first of all protect people within their home countries so that they don't have to relocate on the one hand, and where that fails, doing precisely what you gentlemen are doing and trying to relocate people to pretty much within their linguistic block or within their region, so that there's not this massive culture shock or sense of dislocation and dissonance for the artists who are relocated. So whereas in the north, the protective mechanisms in the north, the Safe Havens, the residencies seem to be receiving people from much further abroad, from very different cultures and circumstances. The African initiatives seem to be very much that we are working within our environments, we're working with our neighbors. It's a much closer cultural and associational relationship. There are limitations to this. We, for instance, just as H.A.R.T, will not accept people from Zimbabwe, and this is because the dangers of accepting Zimbabweans into South Africa, because we've had We've had terrible examples of assassinations being conducted on South African soil of Zimbabweans by agents from the Central Intelligence Organization. My very first relocation, before I even, in fact, when I was working as a journalist, before I even got involved with this network, was of a young Zimbabwean journalist who'd been grievously tortured, and we were relocating him from Johannesburg to Durban, and he disappeared en route, and we've never heard of him since. So I never want to go through that through that again. So obviously there are very different operating environments between the north and the south. A lot of the northern models have been based around a close association or integration with, particularly with a model like International Cities of Refuge Network, with the local authorities, with municipalities, etc. This is not often that possible in the global south, where we have xenophobic, often authorities, we have corrupt local governance or weak and insufficient local governance structures. So perhaps you guys can comment a little bit about how your models are supported in what I presume is largely an absence of support from governance structures.
Okay. For instance, in Tanzania, it was not easy when we started. It was like even the government was thinking that we are going to create diplomatic issues with the other countries, for instance. Because when you locate someone who criticized the government in the neighboring country, then he comes to Tanzania for a few months. There was a time they asked us to stop the project, but we kept explaining to them that people we are helping are not like political opponents and so on. They are people who are complementing the work of the government, because they are helping community, and the government is there to help the community. But that was like in the first year. But in 2018, when we organized this Art and Human Rights event, exhibition, we saw people from the government who came and who had the speeches, who said, yes, this is a good project, and they also gave their testimonies that at the beginning they couldn't understand what we were going to do and what kind of people we were going to support. But now we are even organizing some activities or events with the municipalities of Kinondon or in Dar es Salaam. So
you had to build allies first.
It took time.
And then demonstrate, as you did in the film, that the nature of the people that you were working with,
they
in
are
order to
just
convince
they
the
are
authorities that
helping the community as the government is also supposed to. Yeah.
Okay. Charles?
Yeah, I think what he's saying is it's possible, but in some cases it's almost impossible to do that, because the level of threat that the human rights defender will be facing does not allow for such type of arrangements to be made. So usually, I would agree with you that this work is dangerous, and sometimes you actually have to go beyond just the normal scope in order to protect someone, because some of them you have to do even it's more like an extraction to try and see how you can get that person safe. So it goes beyond just the normal, because some of the issues are very serious to the extent that there is no time for negotiations. So the other thing that we do is we also try to do, like you said, internal relocation, so that these persons are in the country, but they actually really don't know where they are, through issues of safe houses and other mechanisms that make them safe within the country if it's possible, if it's not possible for them to leave the country.
Okay, so you do internal relocations as well, so from one city to another, so where the person is not as high profile and things can calm down a bit. All right. Tell us a little bit about, I'm presuming when you talk about Pretoria, Cape Town, Johannesburg, it's because South Africa is a democracy, etc. But tell us about the rationale behind, we'll get to Kampala later, but Tunis and Abuja, they sound really interesting.
Yeah, because with the Ubuntu Hub Cities initiative, it's more of a long-term relocation. It's not an emergency relocation where someone is facing imminent threat. So this one is more for reintegration of the human rights defender into society. So the rationale behind these cities that's where most of the institutions are. So that when we relocate you from Mozambique, let's say, and you want to be able to do a short course whilst you're being relocated, you can be able to attend, to go to Center for Human Rights in Pretoria and attend, or we can attach you to an organization that works on the thematical areas that you're fighting for when you're back home. So we saw that most organizations, most institutions, and most embassies in Pretoria, Joburg, and Cape Town. So that was mainly the reason why we thought this could be beneficial, because most of the partners are also there. Yes.
So those are your allies, those are your third-party institutional supporters and people who can provide you with a platform for your creatives to demonstrate their works or engage with their publics, create a new profile, because often there's a lot of loss of profile when you go into exile, and how to maintain that professional status. Gentlemen, thank you so much, I really appreciate it. We're running a little bit behind schedule, so we're going to take our coffee break now. The coffee room, our caterers, as I said, just around the corner. If you walk through the big outdoor chess set, our caterers on that side. If we could make it a 10-minute break and then reconvene, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much.